Welcome to another episode of Victoria's Lounge. Today we're talking about rare diseases. Now, these are conditions which are low in prevalence, but they're high in complexity. So with that comes the whole headache of trying to diagnose them, access to treatment, which all becomes a very expensive affair. You're about to meet a woman who's a mom to two girls who have rare conditions, and she also advocates for rare diseases right here in Kenya. We'll also be speaking to a gentleman who is living his best life at 33 years old with cerebral palsy. And then we'll be working it out in the gym with another gentleman who has hyperhidrosis. So without further ado, let's meet them now. Great. So we're here having another wonderful discussion with you, Christina. Thank you for welcoming us to your home. It's so beautiful. I'll come here for a vacation at one point. But I'm really glad that we get to do this again. And this time we're talking about rare diseases here in Kenya. For those who may not know and may think, what's the difference from probably any other disease that exists out there, and why it's so important for you to have this community that you've really created in terms of support, what are rare diseases?
Okay, in Kenya, we don't have a specific definition, but going by global, rare diseases are disease that affects a smaller population. Like in the US, they say it's 1 in every 200,000. And in UK, Europe, they say it's 1 in every, I think a disease that affects less than a certain number of population. But in Kenya, or rather in Africa per se, we don't have a standardized, because we don't have databases to provide for that.
I can only imagine the challenge of trying to figure out what's the scale that we're dealing with in terms of rare diseases here in Kenya. Of course, you're quoting numbers that are global, and hence why you've decided to begin this community and this initiative. But for what you know, what kind of rare diseases are we dealing with here?
Like for my kids, it's 1. A couple of other conditions, it's 1, but the one that we found most common is one called muscular dystrophy and multiple sclerosis. Those ones, at least the numbers are more than 10. So at least you can say they have numbers. But with time, we are hoping to grow more and get to know more conditions and hopefully more people who are affected by these conditions.
Right. So there's no question that when you put rare in that phrase of rare disease, it's going to be that much more difficult to diagnose. From your personal journey of trying to figure out, at least for your two girls, what it was that they had, and then just generally across the board for any other caregivers trying to figure out what rare diseases they're dealing with.
Let me pick an example of one rare disease called hereditary angioedema, whereby it manifests itself by somebody swelling. You can either swell your face, your hands, even your internal organs on the inside. So there's a lot of misdiagnosis, because you can go and be told you probably have an inflammation of something, and that's not the cause. Probably the real problem is the real condition is hereditary angioedema. So for me, like that one person I know had to go, I think, more than 10 years before she got a proper diagnosis, a doctor saying, you know what, you're not allergic to anything, this is what the problem is. And you see, most rare conditions don't have cures, so it's just about management and being able to sort things out as they come.
People in the medical profession, especially in Kenya, you know, the doctors, really their diagnosis, they're the voice of God. You don't challenge them. And whatever they say is law. So when it comes to you, you're an individual who, or a caregiver who has or deals with a rare disease, and now trying to sensitize them on this condition. How do you do that to where they are receptive?
I know in some groups, you find that they refer not their colleagues, but other parents to doctors who understand, because there's some doctors who will not understand why the patient is telling him or her what to do. So you find that they tend to see certain doctors who have that switched mentality that, yes, I may not always be the expert, because you see, as a rare disease parent, I'm an expert in that particular rare disease more than the doctor will ever be, because I have researched, I have done all that. So we tend, if you can't find a doctor that understands us, you find that parents tend to move to other doctors who at least will give them room for hearing.
Right. So that's now really crossing over into the territory of stigma, that though dealing with the health profession. But now, society, how do you deal with it, and then also offer support to the people within Rare Diseases Kenya and how they can deal and cope with it?
Personally, I was lucky. I didn't go through stigma. My friends, families, my close-knit society were very understanding from the get-go. And they offered all the support they could, and they took the kids as they were, so I didn't have so much a stigma. Unless now we're talking about me going to the supermarket and somebody staring at me from afar, but at least you can ignore because they don't know you, they don't know your story, so you're like, you know what, let it pass. But at least from those around us, it's been good. But in terms of the Rare Disease Kenya group, we formed a group actually, even on our WhatsApp group, where we encourage each other, where we tell each other what to do in such situations, or if somebody's staring, you might want to offer some more knowledge of, can I give you more insight into what is happening to me or my child, or something like that. So at least once you have that extra thick skin, you can go out and enlighten the society around you, because you can't get rid of stigma if you don't educate those around you.
All right, so let's talk about money. You can't ignore that part of the conversation when you're dealing with rare diseases. What toll does it take, especially on the average Kenyan family?
It's over the board. I can't even begin to explain it, because from something as simple as therapy, occupational therapy, which speech therapy, these are things that do not have a time limit, because they are done as long as a child needs such therapy. Then you have education, which, as you know, special needs schools are not that many, and the ones that are there are very expensive. And you can even find in an integrated school whereby my child who has special needs and yours who is typical are in the same class, I'll probably pay more school fees than you. So you see, that is even extra cost. And then medication, you have supplements to pay, medications, and these are just for the average typical rare condition child. There are some on the extreme who are, like I know of a case of a family whose child is on life support and they're at home. So you don't even want to know what the the electricity costs are in the evening, at the end of the month, or how much it is to pay for nurses, because it's basically an ICU that is at home. So it can actually hit the roof, and you find most of us can't afford it. How we live, I think, is just by God's grace.
So the financial implications aside, there's also taking care of you. As a caregiver, as a parent, you also have to think about your mental state. Are you coping beyond just taking care of them? You oftentimes can forget about yourself. So how did you do it? And how do you remind, your fellow caregivers in Rare Diseases Kenya how to do it?
I remember for my firstborn, I got so engrossed in reading about her condition that I focused more on the negative, that this can happen, you need to do this can happen, that I forgot to actually enjoy her life, enjoy that what was happening that is good. And I made a mental note for my second-born child to actually enjoy the small milestones, forget the what-ifs, because there's nothing I can do about it, and get to see them thrive at their pace. It wasn't easy. You can hit depression very easily. And you see, the thing is, as a caregiver, the first thing you think about is the person you're taking care of, not yourself. With time, personally, I learned that it is okay to take care of myself. It is okay not to always focus on the child, because at the end of the day, I am also human.
I like the fact that you mentioned being present in the moment and enjoying this journey of being a parent of this child. I remember a video I watched of a gentleman much older now. He has cerebral palsy, and he was talking about his upbringing and how his mom had to treat him at that point as a teenager, treat me like a regular teenager. And, you know, for any other child, you'd want to be treated as a kid in that stage, and not feel that I'm being over pembelezed, for lack of a better term, and my parent wants to make sure that I'm being taken care of. But how do you remind other parents of the importance of that, and making sure that they can exercise some form of independence?
I attended a workshop. What I took from there is, no, it doesn't have to be a special needs child, even a regular child, that they are still human. Treat them as human, respect them with their feelings and everything. And you have to learn that even if they want to say no, understand why they're saying no. Just don't say, I'm the adult here, I'm the parent, so I get to say what goes. Try and involve them in the decision makings, give them choices. Or you don't want tea, what do you want, milk, or, you know, something else. So at least that way you learn to interact and you give them that feeling of independence, that, oh yes, today I made the decision, I chose milk, yet, you know, you only just gave them 2 options, you know. So it also helps them grow and feel like, yes, I'm part of this community and my feelings are worthy of something.
But when it comes to support that you'd like to see from various sectors of society, be it from schools, be it from government, health institutions, what would you like to see to be able to forward the agenda for rare diseases here in Kenya?
From the government, would want at least more input into rare diseases, at least NHIF give us more cover, because sadly our conditions are not covered by the other insurance companies, because they are either congenital or they are chronic or they're genetic. So you find that we are not covered as it is. So most of the costs are out of pocket. So something as basic as health insurance would really go a long way. From society, you have something as accept us as we are, and just if you don't know something, ask. We don't mind explaining. Staring is rude, or making your own judgment post staring is also not correct. So just ask us and we'll be glad to share and educate you on what is going on around us. And you see, tomorrow you'll be more accommodating because you understand us. Something else I'd really want to add is that if you think you have a rare condition and you're not sure what to do, reach out to us. The least we can do is give emotional support, which is much, much more than financial support. And you can get that from us. We are a group of like 15 different conditions coming together, and we're getting more and more, which is good. And at least from there, and we're all Kenyans, so from worst case scenario, we can meet for coffee, laugh or cry about our different conditions, but at least encourage each other. So if you have a condition, or you think somebody has a condition and you'd like to help, just reach out to us. We're more than happy to be in touch.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina, for this and for creating this community that is so necessary. Like you were mentioning earlier, that you often rely on international groups when it comes to support, but here they are, Rare Diseases Kenya, literally a phone call away. You can sit down, have coffee, as Christina said, and get that support that you so badly need when it comes to a place like Kenya. So thanks for watching, but of course we'll also connect you to what Rare Diseases Kenya is doing. All of our social media platforms will have their contacts, so you can get in touch with them, and they have some lovely YouTube videos. You should check them out on their channel on YouTube. But of course we'll continue on with this conversation. We're taking a short break here on Victoria's Lounge, but you don't want to miss what's coming up next. All right, welcome back. So, change of scenery a bit. We are in an office. I'm sitting across from Matthew Karungu Kamoyo, 33 years old, living with cerebral palsy, and we're actually at the Communications Authority of Kenya. So this is where you work. I came and I found you in action with your co-workers. But before we get to this setting, Matthew, tell us about what it was like growing up.
Okay, first of all, when I was born, I did not cry. I got stuck. Then I was put by forceps. So I was put into an incubator for 4 days.
So is that the point where the cerebral palsy began to manifest?
Yes, because cerebral palsy is lack of oxygen. When a baby doesn't cry from birth, it occurs, and it is a part of the brain that we tell you wake up, go somewhere. Yeah.
So now, when you're growing up, you're being raised by your mother.
Yeah.
And so what was life like?
First of all, I want to thank my mom because she did not hide me at all. We've gone to parties, holidays, everywhere together.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that your mother was not ashamed of you.
Yeah.
So she tried to give you a normal life as best she could.
Yes.
So even when it came to going to school, I mean, you had the comfort of your mom taking care of you and not making you feel like you're different. But now when going to school, what was that like?
I started school when I was 11 years, and I was enrolled to class 1 when I was 11 years old.
And what was it like being with other children? Did they treat you differently?
The school I was taking was the one for people like us.
So a special needs school.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Thika.
And what was that experience like? Because you had now students who had other special needs conditions.
I tried to socialize with them.
And I can imagine growing up, there were several things that you were told you could not do. What were some of those things that now you are doing?
Maybe in boarding school, and I was like bullied.
Okay, so
Because in boarding school, you get bullied, and you don't have somewhere to go and carry on. You must survive.
what were some of the things they would say to you?
Like, I wouldn't grow up to be a person. I wouldn't be able to go to college, get a degree. Yeah.
And you've done all of those things.
Yes.
Here we are, you have your degree.
Yeah.
Tell us about your education journey now in university. You're doing something that your peers in boarding school told you you would never do.
When I finished high school, which was 2007, I did GCE because I did KCPE. In fact, in 2004 was my biggest career-wise to see me finishing class 8 and I only learned in January, September and October. Then November we started exam.
So now you have your degree, you're armed with your education, you have your papers, you begin to look for a job.
Yeah.
What was that like?
When I finished my GD in entrepreneurship and small business management, I was able to secure internship at the Communication Commission of Kenya,
Okay.
which is now Communication Authority of Kenya.
So you start getting into the working world.
Yes.
What did you find about the environment?
It was so good. People appreciated me. People took me gently, and I was able to do my work according to my speed.
Great. So, Matthew, I was talking to one of your supervisors, and they told me before you came, the office building wasn't as friendly to people with disabilities or special needs. So your presence changed things. I don't know if you'd like to tell us how they changed.
Like me normally dropped where you came from.
Okay.
Like they had to be a step, but now they put a ramp for me, and you see at the beside the building, I have a parking for my own car, where I will be parking when I come to work.
Wow. So in terms of accessibility, you've mentioned coming to the building, it's okay. What about moving around in the office when you're doing your work?
It's very easy.
So do you use crutches? I can see there's a chair right behind you. What do you use to move around?
In the office, I use a chair behind me, and this is because the floor is slippery.
So take us through your day-to-day. What do you do here at CAK?
What I do members register. The people come to use the library. I record them on an Excel sheet. I also record the books which have been borrowed. I also do file indexing, and I also upload daily media scans every day to the internet.
I'm curious, do you enjoy what you do? You know, most people say, I hate my job, but do you like what you do?
I love my job
Wow.
very much.
And I wonder what your mom thinks now. She must be incredibly proud of you.
Very happy.
What does she say?
You've come a long way, and keep that spirit of moving it.
You are very passionate about raising awareness about cerebral palsy, especially here in Kenya. Why is that?
This is because I want to urge parents who have cerebral palsy to babies not to hide them in their houses. Go with them wherever you're going, no matter what people are talking about your baby, they are not in your shoes and they can't experience what you experience on day-to-day.
So you're basically saying that they should allow them to live life normally.
Yes.
Yeah. And Matthew, what is your hope for the future?
I want to be an eye opener to everyone who have cerebral palsy, and I hope one day in future I will go and talk to people about it abroad.
Wow. Thank you so much, Matthew. And can I tell you, you've already opened my eyes. And I hope to the people who are watching, your eyes have been opened as well, that disability is not inability. You've just seen Matthew's amazing story, that you can do anything that you put your mind to. On that note, let's take a short break here on Victoria's Lounge. Much more ahead. All right, welcome back. You are still watching Victoria's Lounge. A different setup here. We are at Bravo Gym, and I'm with Martin Kim. Martin, it's great that we finally get to do this. I have not been in the gym in a while, I'd admit. But take us through your story. What exactly is hyperhidrosis?
Hyperhidrosis is defined as an excessive sweating disorder or a sympathetic nerve disorder. It's a coordination of the central nervous system. So what happens is the brain tends to open the sympathetic nerves, which controls the sweat, and it opens the wrong nerves. So you end up sweating at odd times and you end up sweating excessively.
Right. So how long have you had the condition?
Well, my whole adult life, for the last 30 years.
My goodness.
I've struggled with it for the last 30 years. It's not been easy, simply because at the time I didn't even know it was a medical condition.
Right.
So I had to go through a lot just trying to figure out what's happening to me all by myself.
I mean, what are some of the triggers? Let me get my bicep curl here, but what are some of the triggers of the condition?
Well, triggers will include anxiety and stress. Those are like the two main key triggers. But it cannot be really centered on the two, because when you have this condition, you can sweat anytime, whether it's hot or rainy or cold.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did you cope in school? You know, I'm just trying to think among your peers, they don't understand what's going on. And of course, you'll be a bit more self-conscious.
I knew about my excessive sweating when I was enrolled in primary school.
Oh, wow.
That's when I knew I was different, because the rest, they had normal sweating patterns.
Yeah.
But if I compare myself, my situation was different. I was the only one. So I would avoid any physical interactions, from holding hands. And you know, back in school, me, I'm old school, so we used to have this PE, the physical education.
Yes, yeah.
So whenever those activities were on the timetable, I would freak out, because any interaction would just render me off the edge.
Yeah.
And some of the teachers back then, they didn't understand what was going on, so I would get a lot of flogging. Because, you know, for them, they translated my sweating to anxiety. But anxiety is a trigger. A normal person can only sweat up to 4 liters an hour. For me, I do more than that.
I think we can head on to the next station.
But first, let me warm up.
Yeah, let's see one of your bench presses here. How much weight is that?
20.
Wow. My goodness. And you're doing, what, 10 reps?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we're here at the leg press. Martin, I'm curious, how do you cope with the condition?
Well, what I have is what we call primary focal hyperhidrosis. This means I sweat in all the 3 focal areas. It will include my hands, my armpits, and fit. So a change of lifestyle. I don't drink. I quit drinking. I don't do junk food. I tend to do a lot of home-cooked meal. A change of wardrobe. I go for dark-colored clothes. I prefer black, and I do a lot of black tea.
And when it comes to, of course, here we're at the gym, it would seem like the most natural place to be because everyone sweats a lot. So this is part of helping to manage it as well?
Yes, because the more I lift weights, the more I work out, I sweat. So I have to hydrate myself.
Right.
So it's more of a balancing act. And again, I'm able to fight some of the triggers, which include stress.
Stress, exactly.
Stress is a main trigger.
Right.
It can really affect you.
And what about work? How do you manage there as well?
Over the last 30 years of my life, I've managed to hide my sweat from other people, which it's not easy. You can't hide forever. There are those who notice, and there are those who never. Up until I told them, you know, I have this condition, it was hard for them to believe. So in my workplace or where I work, I always have to make sure I have about 3 to 4 pairs of handkerchiefs with me. Of course, my sweating patterns have changed the last 2 years, and I think it's because of the change that I made in my life at the time.
Yeah.
Working out, drinking a lot of water, just being aware of my own body and my own sweating. Though it's not permanent, because with hyperhidrosis there is no cure. There is no cure, but there is treatment.
There are treatments. So what is out there?
Well, treatment is expensive. We have both medication, medical treatment, and we have home remedies. But both alternatives are expensive. The medicine I'm taking, which I visited a dermatologist last year, the quantity that lasts for a month is about 6,500 to 7,000. And insurance, they really don't cover hyperhidrosis. It's unless the dermatologist explains deeper for them to allow. There are other alternatives, like the older but renewed forms of treatment, like the use of antiperspirants. So we have the regular antiperspirants, which are available in supermarkets, and then we have over-the-counter. Over-the-counter now, they are clinically approved.
My goodness, so it's a very expensive affair. Yeah.
On the home remedies, the use of black tea, where you have to dip your hands and feet in a boiled black tea solution for about 10 to 15 minutes, or 15 to 20.
And what does that do?
What it does, it closes some of the sweating pores, but you have to do it overnight, so that in the morning, so that you can monitor in the morning. Again, on the medical treatments, there's a machine called anti-forensis. It's like a small machine where you place your hands and feet. What it does, it passes some electrical shocks to your sweat glands, just to paralyze them for a second or for a short period of time to reduce the sweating. There's the use of injection. They inject your armpits, a total of 60 injections, 30. And then now there is surgery, which I do not recommend people to go for. It's called ETS, endoscopic thermal sympathectomy. What they do, they nip 2 nerves from both sides of your chest, and they have to nip your rib cage. It's a process. ETS is meant to stop the areas you want to stop sweating, but there are some side effects. Number one is what we call compensatory sweating. You will sweat in other areas. It can also affect your brain, your nerves, impaired cognitive thinking. It's tough, and I know of a few who have gone through ETS, and chances are it can backfire. It can't work.
Goodness, I think we can head to the bikes as we wrap up. So, this whole segment, Martin, is about awareness that we're trying to raise about hyperhidrosis. And it's so interesting how you told me that the way you found out was from another talk show.
The Tyra Banks show.
The Tyra Banks show, And this is what it's all about, starting the conversation, getting people aware of what it is. Tell us more about the actual condition, because we talked about your experience, but when it comes to hyperhidrosis, are there different strains, for lack of a better term?
It's categorized into two. We have the primary focal hyperhidrosis and secondary generalized.
Okay.
Primary focal, this is the actual medical condition itself. It starts from childhood or since birth, all the way to adolescent, up until adulthood.
Right.
It's not caused by an underlying medical condition or an effect to a medication. It affects the three focal areas, the main ones, the hands, the armpits, and the feet. But doesn't mean that you won't sweat on other areas.
Right.
It's possible.
Right.
And then we have the secondary generalized. Secondary generalized hyperhidrosis, this means it's caused by an underlying medical condition. This would be any terminal illness, from cancer, diabetes, or you're taking medication that has mercury, menopause, right? And the sweating occurs mostly at night. So understanding the differences between the two, it's very important, it's key.
And of course, you're going to be biking somewhere to raise awareness for hyperhidrosis. Also, why we're on these bikes. But tell us more about the campaign.
Well, I decided to cycle from Nairobi to Kisumu for a week to raise awareness on hyperhidrosis. It's a medical condition that people don't talk about.
Yeah.
And the many that struggle or suffer with it, they suffer in silence. I'm going to hold a 2-day conference in Kisumu to educate people on hyperhidrosis. But on the way, we'll have different stopovers. So I'll be issuing flyers, and flyers have all the contacts, so they can reach me through the initiative.
Okay.
They can get more to learn and understand. And my trainer will be accompanying me. So I'm looking forward to it's an interesting but educative adventure.
Wow. So what would you tell someone watching who is going through the same? What encouragement would you give them?
Hyperhidrosis is not a death sentence. Neither is it a character flaw. I embrace it. It's my perfect imperfection. I look at it as I try and look myself or perceive myself as a superpower with different powers.
Yes.
So I try as much as possible not to allow it to prevent me from maximizing my full potential. It's not easy. It's a process.
Right.
It's a process. So you have to go through it. I have my worst days where it can get in the way. It has a tendency of controlling some aspects of your life. Especially the greatest problem is the social stigma. Like there are those romantic gestures that you can't do, like holding hands and stuff. But once in a while you just have to frame your mind and remember that it's not meant to zero in and make you less. You're actually supposed to take what you have and build something that is much bigger than you.
What a point to end on. Thank you so much, Martin, for your time and raising more awareness on hyperhidrosis. I hope for those watching, you've seen and learned and now understood the struggles of many Kenyans who have various rare conditions. And this will awaken you to being a support to them. We'll have all the details for Martin and his hyperhidrosis campaign, of course, with Matthew and cerebral palsy, and what Christina is doing for rare diseases here in Kenya. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much to Bravo also for hosting us for this segment. Let's do this again next week. Have a lovely evening.